Alrighty, well, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm thrilled to be here in the company of such talented and dedicated people and look forward to speaking with you all over the course of the conference. As mentioned, I'm the Senior Director for Pathways at the Defense Innovation Unit Experimental, or DIUx, an office whose mission it is to accelerate commercial innovation into the Department of Defense. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the vital partnership that must exist between the Department of Defense and the innovative technology industrial base. And at the conclusion, I'd like to save time to take a few questions from the audience. It's particularly poignant to be here to discuss the topic of national security and technology on the anniversary of 9/11. In the time since those attacks, our world has become more complex, and the lines between military and commercial technology have become blurred, with the definition of cutting edge increasingly residing in the commercial marketplace rather than within the government. Our military is facing a more complex, more dangerous, and more widespread threat landscape than ever before. From fighting terrorism across the globe to deterring near-peer nation states, our nation's soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen must engage across all domains: land, sea, air, space, and even cyber. To meet and dominate these challenges, we must provide the best technology available to our men and women in uniform as quickly as possible. As a department and as a country, we have a sacred responsibility to these men and women to use all tools available to ensure our nation's security. Historically, the U.S. defense industrial base held a monopoly on advanced technology. Today, however, startups are developing dual-use technologies that can increase combat effectiveness across the U.S. military. The commercial market is actually outspending government research and development by a factor of 3 to 1, investing more than $1 trillion in the last 5 years in leading-edge capabilities such as artificial intelligence, autonomy, and space. To illustrate just how far the locus of innovation has swung, Apple and Google each have a greater market capitalization than the entire defense industry combined. In many of these areas, commercial capabilities, particularly those related to software, outpace government capabilities and those of traditionally government-focused companies. This widespread diffusion of technology has touched off an innovation race among advanced militaries. Additionally, the easy availability and often relatively low price of advanced technology means that non-advanced, non-state actors can leverage this commercial technology against our military. For example, ISIS can use drones purchased from the commercial marketplace and, with basic modifications, turn them into lethal improvised explosive devices. Much of what drives this innovation boon is the enormous amount of private funding invested in commercial technology. Rather than spending taxpayer dollars in an effort to reinvent the wheel, the Department of Defense must be able to make use of what's already being developed in the commercial marketplace, leveraging private sector scouting, due diligence, and financial investment for pilot projects. As an example, the number of companies that DIUx has on contract have received roughly $1.8 billion in private venture capital and have been backed by a myriad of top-tier investors, including Andreessen Horowitz, Founders Fund, JV, Incutel, Lux Capital, and Spark Capital, among others. Leveraging this almost $2 billion in private investment is prudent not only because it gives us access to top technology already developed for the commercial marketplace, but because it's $2 billion that the government doesn't have to spend developing this technology on its own. To leverage this investment, DIUx must first demonstrate that the Department of Defense can actually be a valuable customer, which is not how we've traditionally been viewed by the commercial sector and startups. Part of DIUx's mission has been to change this view of the department, helping it move at the speed of commercial business and better communicating our challenges to a broader audience. Over the past year, we've seen an important change in response from the commercial market. 7 DIUx portfolio companies have been able to raise roughly $720 million in subsequent rounds of funding, partially due to their work with DoD. Not only has the commercial technology marketplace shown a willingness to work with DoD as a customer, but they're also willing to then invest more in technologies that we're buying. This shift is absolutely critical, as it shows that DoD has the potential to be a valuable participant and partner in this marketplace. The problem is that DIUx is actually a niche example. More broadly, despite our critical need for the technology coming out of the commercial market, DoD is unable to access this market as a customer or as an influencer. To understand this problem and how to solve it, we have to first take a look at DoD's traditional role as a buyer. The Department of Defense, for most of its existence, has functioned as a monopsony. that is, the single buyer of warfighting technology. No commercial market exists for tanks, aircraft carriers, fighter aircraft, or missiles. Accordingly, the defense acquisition, development, and procurement systems are designed to capitalize on this monopsonist identity. While DoD remains a monopsony today for much of its technology needs, the significant increase in private R&D investment over the past few decades has created this innovative commercial technology industrial base that's separate and distinct from the defense industrial base. These private investments have created technology of important consequence to DoD in areas such as cyber, virtual reality, robotics, and artificial intelligence, among others. Yet DoD has as much need for these commercially based enabling technologies as it does in traditional weapons. Thus, DoD faces two separate markets. First, the market for traditional weapon systems, comprised of the traditional defense industrial base, in which the DoD remains the single buyer. The second market is for this enabling commercial technology, grounded in commercial technology development, and comprised of top-tier commercial companies and startups. In this second market, DoD is a minority buyer that's actually dwarfed by larger commercial buyers. So the DoD needs to buy goods and services from both of these markets, but for the most part applies the same acquisition, procurement, infrastructure, and culture across the board. So you're not supposed to be able to read this chart, don't worry. It's an eye chart on purpose. This depicts the department's current acquisition and budgeting processes, right? And you can see that it's an eye chart. As a company, you'd have to have an entire division, if not the entire company, set up to do business with the government in order to penetrate this maze. This is something that most commercial companies simply won't do, as the opportunity cost to their primary customers is too great. This traditional approach to acquisition creates high barriers to entry and lengthens procurement timelines, which disincentivizes top performers and top innovators from the innovative technology marketplace from working with DoD. DoD needs to recognize the distinct difference between these two markets, our role in each, and the different acquisition approaches needed. All attempts up to this point to reform this very bureaucratic acquisition and procurement process have been colored by our rooted identity as a monopsony, in the belief that we still have sufficient buying power in any market to inform and participate in technology development. Instead, DoD must recognize the existence and importance of this top-tier commercial technology market and transform itself into a competitive customer. So how can DoD actually transform itself into a competitive customer? Fundamentally, a customer is defined by its business practices and its business culture. The DoD has to be proactive in transforming both of these qualities in order to effectively access this commercial top-tier technology market. My organization at DIUx was created to help solve these problems and to accelerate commercial innovation in the Department of Defense. So what is DIUx doing? We're working to transform not only the business practices, but also the business culture of the Department of Defense to make ourselves a more attractive customer to top-tier technology companies. These two aspects, culture and process, are so intertwined that you can't change one without the other. Rather than attempting to make incremental changes to our buying practices and hoping that our buying culture follows, we fashion an entirely new approach to development and procurement targeted specifically to commercial technology companies. This process, called the Commercial Solutions Opening, or the CSO, integrates three critical cultural changes into our buying practices, becoming fast, flexible, and collaborative. So first, fast. It can take the department upwards of 7 years to develop and buy an enterprise software program, even longer when we're buying hardware platforms such as planes and ships. By the time we buy what we've actually set out to buy at the beginning, that technology is already out of date, as everyone here knows that technology is developed on much faster cycles. Additionally, most tech companies are not willing to waste years of man-hours developing and submitting proposals for work in the government, time that could be spent on profitable and ready commercial clients. So we have to fix the speed at which we buy things. So under the DIUx CSO, we've demonstrated that DoD can compete, negotiate, and award prototype contracts in less than 60 days, which is light speed for the Department of Defense and the government. We must scale the speed of doing business across the broader department. Second, we have to be flexible. Over the past 50 years, an incredibly complex web of law, regulation, and policy has been spun around defense development and procurement. This creates high barriers to entry to the defense market and disincentivizes non-defense companies from working with DoD. It creates an artificially small industrial base, when in reality, we need to source technology from the best companies, regardless of whether or not they can hack their way through the bureaucracy. To that end, we're beginning to use flexible authorities granted to us by Congress to create a competitive process that allows any company to bring their best ideas to the department and compete to solve our hardest problems. Finally, and most importantly, we have to be collaborative. Traditionally, the Department of Defense develops its technical requirements with little to no input from potential solution providers. This often results in the pursuit of a particular solution that may not be optimal without understanding the true range of potential solutions to a particular problem. With limited trade space between these preset requirements and technical realities during development, we often find ourselves over budget and behind on schedule with suboptimal outcomes. We have to allow and incentivize a continuous communication loop between the problem holders, our warfighters, and potential solution holders, top engineers, to design and deliver better products that meet our needs. By designing our business practices and culture around these three qualities, speed, flexibility, and collaboration, DIUx has demonstrated that DoD can be an attractive customer to top technology companies. We've awarded almost 50 different projects worth over $100 million to top innovators, and I'd like to share just a few examples of these with you now. The first picture on the left is from a company called Shield AI. Military operators have to enter and navigate buildings, homes, caves, and other structures with little to no information on the threats, hazards, or other conditions they're going to encounter. Shield AI produces an autonomous indoor tactical quadcopter that determines a point of entry from outside a structure and flies through it, mapping the area and sending back a video feed. Additionally, we're integrating this quadcopter into an existing platform that will allow Shield AI drones to be deployed from a longer range. This partnership with Shield AI demonstrates the utility of integrating a commercially developed product into military use cases. Next on the right is a product called SailDrone. In general, maritime awareness is limited by high costs, finite numbers of exquisite sensors, adversarial threats, environmental conditions, maintenance requirements, and manned crew limitations, among other factors. SailDrone provides an autonomous sailing drone employing a suite of solar-powered technical sensors with no fuel requirements, no crew, and no frequent maintenance requirements. Again, we've been able to take a commercial product developed to collect scientific data and leverage it for military use cases, rather than developing and building a military-specific product ourselves. These next pictures represent a problem faced by both the department and the commercial sector: multi-factor authentication for network access. DoD's complex data access environment and evolving threat landscape requires device-agnostic agility with strong identification and authentication, even when devices or credentials are lost. To that end, DIUx is executing multiple pilots to try out several multi-factor authentication technologies to build an integrated system. We've partnered with a company called Lastwall to demonstrate their authentication platform for seamless, risk-based access. Additionally, we're partnering with the Army to integrate Yubico's YubiKey multi-protocol authentication devices in DoD's public key infrastructure. There are a myriad of different technologies being developed in this space right now, and it's our goal to prototype a wide variety of different solutions, bet the field, so to speak, and then these represent just two of these potential answers. We'll continue to partner with commercial companies to bring the power of these solutions to bear for the Department of Defense. Next on the left is a product from a company called CeNotes. Military operators need to communicate in loud operational environments while parachuting, driving, or engaging in firefights. Existing communication tools, either through traditional radios or headsets, add weight to a warfighter's load, occupy their hands, or restrict visibility. CeNotes provides a hands-free, ears-free, two-way and removable communications device hidden in the mouth that works via bone conduction. It integrates wirelessly with radios, offering clear communications in high-noise environments. It also reduces weight that warfighters must carry and allows the operators to use true hearing protection. The picture on the right represents a company called Quid. Currently, DoD analysts have no automated ability to prioritize and filter mass amounts of written data, determine relevant information, and conduct data analysis and fusion. Quid is a textual analysis company that ingests the ideas and opinions expressed in written language to find patterns and commonalities across billions of documents. Quid's technology and machine-augmented algorithms cut down analysis time through automated content curation and human-to-machine teaming. This technology, when used in conjunction with seasoned analysts, can help shorten the decision cycle. Our ongoing pilot will highlight the use of Quid to strengthen an analyst's ability to research and analyze large volumes of open source text-based data content in a more efficient and effective way. Next, advancements in drone capabilities represent a significant threat to DoD operations from both state and non-state actors. While the prevailing thought has been that this is a military-specific problem, there are actually many companies who are already working to solve this problem for the commercial sector. DIUx is working with several commercial companies that are developing solutions to keep sports and theater venues safe from antagonistic drones. And these same solutions can be leveraged to keep our men and women in uniform safe. We are pursuing multiple solutions to the counter-drone problem set, taking a system of systems approach while emphasizing the expedition of deployment-ready technologies movement to the battle space. Integration of these disparate counter-drone technologies into a battle-ready and user-friendly system remains an important focus area for the department. Next, it's not just autonomous drones or cutting-edge software that matters in the fight. Critically injured personnel often have to have their bodies rapidly cooled to prevent or minimize brain injury, a process that's not particularly fast or easy today. Therapeutics offers a non-invasive, efficient therapeutic hypothermia device to slow inflammation, preserve cells, and improve quality and length of life. The U.S. Army Institute of Surgical Research is using Therapeutics' device for combat injury mitigation. By providing nebulized frozen saline, COOL's technology potentially offers a leap forward in improving patient outcomes from cardiac arrest, spinal cord injury, and traumatic brain injury. The expected applications of this technology include systemic cooling of a patient's central organs, for example, the lungs, heart, and brain, and enhanced delivery of drugs or biologics to the airways. Finally, we've seen a proliferation of commercial space technologies, from small launch, advanced imagery, and data analytics. These new technologies have the potential to yield previously inaccessible insights. However, they require rapid analysis of massive amounts of highly complex data. In this effort, DIUx is working with multiple commercial companies to extract insights from collected imagery and associated data through advanced algorithms. Ultimately, this will enable real-time awareness of both natural and man-made threats. This represents not only a new technology available to DoD, but also a new model of getting information. Rather than building and using our own multi-billion-dollar satellites, where the option exists, we can leverage the same data and tools used by the commercial sector to make economic decisions. These examples are only a small sliver of the partnership that DIUx is building between the Department of Defense and the innovative commercial sector. But this partnership needs to expand and scale, not only across the broader Department of Defense, but across the broader technology industrial base. Our future national security depends on a solid and consistent partnership between these two communities. So in conclusion, the key word in the name of my organization, DIUx, is experimental. Leveraging commercial cutting-edge technology and commercial methodologies is new for the Department of Defense. But once we are able to demonstrate the benefits of working in new ways, we can provide our men and women in uniform the best available technology to achieve their mission, no matter what the source is. DIUx will continue to experiment in new ways to leverage and develop best-of-breed technology in partnership with this diverse and dynamic commercial market. In conclusion, the U.S. military advantage over other countries is historically referred to as an offset. Our first and second offsets are often seen as nuclear strength and stealth and precision weaponry. However, we've now been talking about a third offset for several years, and it's often discussed as a specific technology, sometimes artificial intelligence, sometimes autonomy, sometimes something as yet unknown, that will provide the U.S. a technological advantage over its adversaries. However, as Darwin discovered, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, but the one most adaptable to change. By transforming into a competitive customer, DoD can access and leverage the critical commercial technology market and work effectively with top-tier innovators. This collaboration and partnership between DoD and the private sector is absolutely critical to U.S. national security. We must be able to work together to leverage our collective talents to preserve the security of our country. If we can't band together toward this common goal, the opportunity cost will be the U.S. asymmetric advantage. So thank you, everyone, again, for having me here to speak. I'm enormously grateful to the talents that this community and each and every one of you here bring to bear to accelerate the development of new and game-changing technology every day. And I ask that you consider the Department of Defense as an important customer. Thank you again, and I'd like to now open the floor to any questions from the audience. Yes?
So I'm curious, did DIUx identify this
It's a great question. So we started under Secretary Carter, the previous Secretary of Defense, and have been continued under Secretary Mattis in the new administration. Both secretaries and both administrations have said that the integration of commercial technology into the DoD is an important priority for both, and so we've sprung up but continue to kind of feed that. So it's more of an iterative cycle back and forth.
Hi, I'd like to ask a question of how you determine your targeting for technology. Where does the input come from? Is it strictly related to the Department of Defense, or are some of the other partner agencies participating in putting together a list of targeted solutions that they're looking for? And then once this list is assembled, I am assuming it's assembled, how is the determination made to prioritize those?
Great question. So we don't start with a single kind of prioritized list for the Department of Defense. Rather, we work with a lot of different disparate customers from across the department, from everyone from small operational units all the way up to, for example, the DoD CIO. All of those different customers bring to bear specific problems, and we work with those individual customers to, first of all, curate the problem, make sure it's appropriate for the commercial industrial base, and then to bring that problem to this technology industrial base and ask for those different solutions. DIUx is focused primarily on DoD problems, but there's also a group from the Department of Homeland Security that has a similar organization in the Valley that's geared towards bringing DHS-specific problems to this marketplace as well. Other questions? Sorry, it's bright, so if you have your hand up, I might not be able to see you. Yes, sir.
I understand you might have an internal task force to do the collaborative process with commercial organizations. But have you considered forming a task force that includes commercial organizations to be a part of the process?
Sorry, what other organizations?
The commercial organizations to be part of the task force process.
Absolutely. So let me clarify a little bit. When we say collaborative, it's not necessarily a total task force geared at the more strategic organization of how we look and seek for problems, but it's rather collaborating with individual companies to design projects. So for example, I mentioned we had a multi-factor authentication problem. We posted that problem writ large on our website, didn't specify the types of technologies that we were looking for. And as we have individual companies come in and propose particular projects that they would like to use, we work with those individual companies to develop solutions that work best for both us and the company. We found that we get better outcomes on projects when we put the people that know the problem the best, the warfighters, in the same room as the engineers from these different companies that know their individual solutions best. And when they have those conversations between the technical engineers, and the warfighters, then they can actually produce a product and a project, a prototype that works best for our needs, because the Department of Defense does not understand and know the particulars of every single company's technology. So the feedback and continued collaboration from those individual companies is really important to us. Questions? Yes.
How did you become involved with this, this group, and how long have you been working with them?
Great question, thank you. I've been here for almost 2 years now. Before this, I spent about 7 years in the Pentagon working on acquisition reform for the Department of Defense. When this particular organization was announced back in April of 2015, I jumped at the chance to be involved because A, I really believed in the mission. I think it's critically important that we work with whoever supplies the best technology to get the best technology to our warfighters. And it just seemed like a great challenge. The Department of Defense traditionally does not do well in working with these kinds of communities, and so I wanted to be a part of that change to solve that problem. Anything else? Alrighty, well, thank you all very much, and I will hand it over to the next speaker. Thank you.